get our total weight. We would break it down into its different components and then weigh those out accordingly. Our fat, our unusable trim, and we will have a little bit of what we call usable trim, which I said earlier is typically grams. So for the strip loin, first of all, strip loin can be purchased in a variety of different ways. Quite often you'll see a number attached, so it'll say whole strip loin, for example, 0x1 or 1x2 or 2x3. What that number is referring to is the length of the tail. So on the tail end or the thinnest part of the strip loin, depending on how it's butchered, you will see different widths. And because it's cut on an angle when it's butchered, it will be longer on one side and shorter on the other. So a 2x1, for example, would be cut, the tail would be 2 inches on this end and 1 inch on the other. This is what we call a 0x1 because it's cut clean. There's 0 inches on one end and the tail is 1 inch on the other. And that's the best because that means more of that unusable trim has been removed beforehand. So there's nothing on the tail that I need to remove. I do need to remove some of this connective tissue found on the underside. So we'll go through this. So this is where the meat was attached to the bone. It's very thin connective tissue, very easily removed. You're going to keep the heat pretty high.
Is that connective tissue or removed?
Pardon me?
Is that connective tissue?
This is connective tissue.
How do you differentiate between fat and connective tissue?
Sorry?
How do you differentiate between fat and connective
How do you
tissue?
tell the difference between, okay, connective tissue is usually translucent, so I can see through it, whereas the fat is thicker and a solid white color. So once all of there is a little bit of fat here as well that I'm removing in the process. That's it. So there we are. That's enough of the fat connective tissue. There is a little chain muscle right here found on the strip loin, and depending on the butcher shop, I like to remove it. This is very similar to the chain that we found on the tenderloin. It's a natural seam that separates the chain muscle from the eye of the strip loin. How you doing there, Mark? How about you, Dylan? Good. So there we are. The chain is removed. You can see underneath it there's more connective tissue. So a good reason to remove the chain so you can eliminate that connective tissue. Anybody bring any steak sauce? No?
I'll go get you some.
Steak sauce for shade.
So I'm removing a bit more of this connective tissue. Thanks, Ron. Great. Bottom's done. Now I can flip it over. So this has got the chain, which is my usable scrap. This is all my inedible stuff. I'll add my fat to this pile. And what I want to do is I want to start removing the fat cap. And with strip loin steaks, you should never remove all of the fat from the top. You want to leave a little bit there. Not only is it going to add juiciness and flavor to the steak, it's going to make for a nicer looking steak as well when you present it. The amount of fat that you remove from the top depends on the size of the strip loin, and your own personal preference. I like to remove anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2. Start heating up another pan more. Do another big one. So a little bit more here. And then sometimes this fat cap can be pretty thick. Well, it depends on your butcher. Right? So if you're ordering a whole strip loin or strip loin steaks from a butcher, you can ask, if you like the fat cut a little thick, you can ask for it to be left a little bit thicker, or you can ask them to trim a little bit more off. From this, we need a big knife now. We can cut our steaks. How do you like your steak cooked? How do I like it cooked? Medium rare. That's your New York steak or your strip loin. And when it's got a big eye like this, you're going to get a really wide steak. Pardon me? Yeah, we can pass one around. Now this